Talking with Paul Ryan, attorney here in Missoula, part of a team defending Marcus Kaarma in the deliberate homicide trial that begins in December. Here it is the middle of November, Paul, and there is a recent media report that chronicles some alleged incidents that happened in other parts of the country. And can you tell me, when you read this story and you knew it was coming out, how that affected you as a defense attorney?
Well, it's disappointing. We all are obligated to follow the law, the state and the defense. And there's a specific law in place in Montana and basically every other state that restricts exactly this kind of information from coming in, because it potentially taints a jury and gets them away from the actual facts of the case. I mean, it stops people from going back 20 years, 10 years, 30 years to when somebody did something under completely different circumstances, raising it to try to bring it into some sort of conformity with what they're now charged with. And the judge looked at this very closely. He made rulings that nothing in the past, essentially, you try to bring up everything. You go back to grade school to bring up something that bad happened to anybody. And so what he said is these things aren't going to come in. And so when it comes out, it's disappointing because all of us worked hard, the state, the judge, and of course us, hopefully to try to make sure that this wasn't going to come up, and then it comes out. I'm not trying to hide anything. It is what it is, but under the rules of law that we have, when it comes out, it's really disappointing. It would be like us bringing up stuff about Didi, and there's all kinds of things that we could bring up with him, but we're restricted to that. And so, in fairness to the process, we're not going to do that. But it forces us to take a look at it. Well, how is this fair when they can bring up stuff that they're not supposed to about our client, yet Didi, who has a history himself, we can't say anything about. We're restricted. Apparently the Missoulian finds it only appropriate to go into the background of our client, yet not to look at the entire picture, not to look at the fact that there's numerous other burglaries within this community that the police have done nothing about. They've made a decision on what they're choosing to write about and not, and that's just really disappointing.
Now, but aren't they just simply practicing good journalism to try to dig and find all the background they can on the case?
I have no problem with somebody that's a journalist digging and doing their job. But my point is, when it's one-sided, it's disappointing. If they want to bring up everything, then so be it. But there's rules, again, that we have to follow within the court process, and everyone knows how sensitive this is and how much publicity there's been. And when you have a motion on this about the venue and restricting what can come out so there won't be further tainting, and then it comes out, it just defeated a lot of the purpose what the court was trying to do. And again, it'll probably force us to renew our venue change motion.
I was going to ask you specifically about that. What would be the procedure this close to the trial?
Well, it can happen. On a venue motion, you can bring it up actually the day of the trial. So there's nothing precluding us from bringing it up, and we'll analyze it as a team. But it's certainly something more that we've already brought up, that we felt that that there had been tainting. And it's not so much the information. I mean, there's two different things. When there's true information, that comes out potentially. When it's allowed within court, that's a whole other thing. When it's misinformation, that's even more problematic. And we've said in the past, we believe that there's been misinformation that's been put out by the media, and we've tried to adhere to very strict standards on our side of what can and can't come in within the media and what will come in the court process.
Okay, so what's your next step then?
Well, we're going to analyze what we think has had as far as an impact, and then bring it up with the judge again about whether we can get a fair trial within this community, which we certainly hoped we could, and we still hope we can. I'm from here. It's not my intention to just run to another community. I know there's a lot of good people here, and that can make decisions based on what the actual facts are, but it's hard when you're hearing things that may potentially taint you, and that's what we've got to do to protect our client in the process to make sure that's not going on. Everybody state, defense, and the judge is striving for a fair trial. That's what we're striving for. If we lose and it was a fair trial, that's the way it is. If we win and it's a fair trial, that's the way it should be. But when it's a tainted process, that's where we all should have a problem with it. Every member of this community.